things. All the things. It's
All
okay.
the things. Hello
We've
and
got
welcome
it.
back to all the things. All the things
So
at
many
Slim
things.
DevOps Alive.
All the things happening.
Yeah, it's all going on. You're sending me. It's the amusing pictures you're sending me, which we'll get to in just a moment. This is Slim DevOps Live episode. What is it? Episode 22 now, I think it is.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. Those that have joined us in chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, this was originally recorded on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps on October the 21st. If you would like to join in interactively with the rest of our community, come and give us a follow over there. Well, Pieter, you're in a familiar location, but not one I've seen you in for quite a while, actually.
Yeah.
Where have you been and how long have you been on the road?
I don't know. I wasn't sure I lived here anymore. Yeah, no, it's good to be back home. It's good to be back. This is like regularly scheduled programming as compared to the previous 3 Twitches that we've done from, I guess, previous like 5 that we've done from various show floors, various places. So it's good. Yeah, I was gone for 3 weeks. I went to Open Source Summit in Seattle, where I caught up with you all from the booth. From there, I flew to St. Louis and I went to Strange Loop just as an attendee, met some people, was there for 2 days. And then from Strange Loop, I went to Los Angeles and I stayed in Hermosa Beach, was working from there in prep of the big show, KubeCon, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. And just before KubeCon, we actually did the Cloud Native Rejects conference, which for people who aren't familiar, it's been kind of a long running, the weekend before KubeCon, and yet the only rule is that your talk has to have been rejected by KubeCon, and then you present there. And it was a really cool little event. It's put on by the people from Kinfolk, or their project is Flatcar. They were acquired by Microsoft, but they're still running this conference, and they're really sweet. The presentations are really, really awesome, and it was a really small in-person and then virtual event, and that was really awesome. And then, of course, we were at the big show last week at KubeCon Los Angeles, which was really cool. It was cool to be back in person. So a little weird traveling for sure, but overall it was pretty good. Marked difference between the West Coast and the center of the country, I will say, in terms of mask wearing and sort of COVID, but all the conferences.
In which way is that?
Just like the awareness of people's kind of space. I mean, I thought all the conferences were very, very safe. The Linux Foundation did an amazing job of making sure people had the scans and masks on, and there was hand sanitizer everywhere. Strange Loop was very well run as well. Like, I mean, from the conference perspective, but I'll say in St. Louis, compared to Seattle and Los Angeles, just the city itself, not as many people wearing masks, people having no problem kind of jamming 12 people into a small elevator and stuff like that. Whereas I felt in California and Seattle, everybody was pretty aware and still being very, very respectful, which was nice, which was good. So
yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because I've noticed a change, because actually this is only the second day that I've been back here at the lodge for just over 3 weeks due to a car failure at home. So my car has become the principal way of sort of getting my daughter to and from school. So I've not been here, and I've come back after a bit over 3 weeks. And it's not now because it's nighttime, but during the day today, it's like how things used to be a long time ago. It's absolutely packed here now, and it was a bit of a shock because it was just like 3 or 4 of us, and now this place is full during the day. So that's new.
Yeah. Well, it's gratifying to see the COVID numbers going down. I'll say, it was very, very strange traveling. Aisha says around the world in 80 days. I'm not sure if I'm ready for a around the world trip yet, but maybe sometime soon. But it does feel like we're getting back to travel a little bit. And I'll say, like, I feel good about where the conferences were. I've taken my follow-up COVID tests. It's all good. We're all good. And so, while it was a little nerve-wracking to be in person, I definitely think that the conference organizers did a great job and kept everybody very safe. So
yeah, it seems that there is some sort of return to whatever our new normal's going to be. And I think we're going to touch on that a little bit, because obviously you were at these events in person, and I was attending as a virtual participant and also a virtual booth. What was I? Booth organizer, I suppose. So, we have that perspective on, yes, these in-person conferences are starting to flow back again, but also it looks like the virtual events are also going to be a fixture in all of this and are going to continue to run in parallel with the in-person event. And I think we've learned that there's some importance in doing the virtual booths well. So where do you want to start with this little retrospective then? Because you've bounced through a number of conferences, but clearly last week was as you say, it was the big event, KubeCon. It was certainly generated a lot more interest for us and a lot more interest in the industry than the other events we've participated in recently.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great place to start. And I think you're totally right about the hybrid events. I think we just live in a hybrid world now. There's a great presentation. One of the keynotes at Strange Loop was actually the future of conferences, and they're kind of going through what are the value of conferences, networking, getting your employer to pay for some travel, which is always nice, but there's some negatives, carbon footprint, obviously we can't connect with everybody, we just connect with a lot more people. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's totally right. I think KubeCon's a good example there where, they estimated about, I think it was somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people were there in person, which made it much bigger than Open Source Summit for sure. And you could see on the Slack channel, actually, that there were like 13 or 14,000 people in the Slack channel. So, just from a sheer getting the word out, getting to know people. I know virtual conferences have challenges, from the perspective of connecting with people, and you don't get that, okay, we're going to go out and have dinner together or whatever. But certainly in terms of reach, it's really important. So, but yeah, I think, so we came up with a little bit of a construct, right, Martin? So we're going to do a little bit of our best of the best. So we have 4 categories, and we're going to go through and we're going to talk about our favorite thing in each of these 4 categories. So our 4 categories are the hottest topic at KubeCon, the best open source project that we saw, the top container trend. Since we're SlimDevOps, we care about containers. We're going to talk about the top container trend, and the best, what we're calling the best attraction mode. Obviously KubeCon, everybody wants to get everyone else's attention, and there's a lot of companies there, and you got to be loud. So what did we see people do that kind of was the best attention grabber at KubeCon? And so for those of you that were attending virtually, or who have been following on Twitter, or who were even there in person in the chat, welcome everybody. Hi Esme, hi Aisha, hi Gitpod, hey Yannick. If you all have ideas, Eric, hey, in those categories as we talk about them, we want to hear your stuff. But
absolutely,
let's dive right in. Martin, hottest topic at KubeCon. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll dive in first. So obviously attending virtually, and also, I have a leaning towards sort of, developer stories. I think the thing that came through for me is that developer experience is here to stay. We've been involved in a number of events this year which are focused around developer experience. Our sort of core mission, although we're making technology, our mission is around reducing friction for developers and having, a powerful developer experience in order to make the lives of developers better, to help them go faster without actually having to work harder. So I saw developer experience as a undercurrent topic which was just pervasive. But then I think what I'm seeing now is outside of, I've seen this topic discussed in other conferences, particularly around community and DevRel for a number of years now, which is developer burnout. But I'm seeing that developer burnout is now a topic that is being discussed openly as a tech track, at technology conferences, not at conferences that are focused more on the human angle. And I think there's a segue between developer experience and this sort of rising awareness of the impact of developer burnout. And I think a symbiotic relationship is starting to develop between, those two topics.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think there's like so much there. You know, in the container space, right? We got a lot of questions about sort of developer environments, and that seems to be a very hot topic. You know, companies there, Gitpod, I know you want to talk about, and Coder, and you know, these sort of other, you know, what VS Code is doing with sort of their developer environments and how those work into working inside of containers. And so that was those dev tools are here to stay. And I thought there was a lot of interesting talks around, you know, so like, should a dev tool like do something for a developer automatically and take work away from them that is like busy and manual work, or should it actually help them deep dive into something that they're like experts about or want to be experts about, you know, like they're sort of solving hard problems on one side and they're sort of automating away problems on another side. And that was like an interesting thread. But I think some of the most interesting things I went to at any of the conferences were around developer burnout, just because I think with COVID, everybody's feeling that, you know, and, you know, I know there were a couple of really great talks about that at KubeCon. I went to sort of a roundtable called Birds of a Feather presentation at Open Source Summit, where we all just sat in a circle. And I was a little taken aback, if I'm being honest, because I thought it was a talk. And so I walked into the room and they're like, no, come sit in the circle and share. But, you know, and it was people really sharing a lot about how they've been struggling with, you know, working from home, sort of the pressure to deliver software. A lot of industries have been disrupted that developers work in these days too. So, you know, it's like, okay, you got to change the game at the same time we're shipping, at the same time you're dealing with your family, at the same time you're dealing with this global pandemic that's going on, and it's just a lot to handle. So I was very happy to see that as such a bright such a bright light shown on developer burnout, and hopefully other industries take note as well. So.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have Kelsey Hightower join us in one of our a live stream here as it happens, but also at the virtual booth as well. And we touched on developer experience and developer burnout as we were closing out that conversation. And Kelsey made a very sort of powerful point about, you know, a developer's work is never done. And actually what organizations are asking developers to do is start running a marathon that they will never finish. And that, you know, we need to start thinking about the humans that are developers and what their human needs are in order to better sort of equip them to deal with and avoid burnout. And you know, he made an obvious point in you know, retrospect, which is, you know, athletes have an off season where they get to take a break and recover and recuperate. And he says, you know, maybe we need to investigate, you know, things like that in the industry in order to give people some respite and some recovery time in order to be a functioning human being. So yeah, I think this is a fascinating topic, and I'm looking forward to more talks on both these topics in the future.
I think we could definitely have some good speakers on it. I know there's a lot of people thinking about it. I know specifically for women as well, who tend to be the caregivers in their families. You know, the working from home with families like leads to a tremendous amount of burnout. I know there's a talk at KubeCon about that. So yeah, definitely. I see. Okay, Danny's here in the chat. I see Esme saying, you know, developer experiences are absolutely something developer tools can be designed for. I have to have some of these complexities abstracted away. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, like, I've seen a couple of good blog posts recently about sort of, you know, there's actually those two types. You know, there's sort of like, you know, abstract the complexity away, or let me actually get into that complexity and see it at a much deeper level. I think it's something we're thinking a lot about at Slim, and what our tool should be doing, you know. And I think we do a little of each right now for containers. So,
So, from your perspective, what was the hottest topic that you were aware of?
Yeah, so I'll pick the obvious one, which was supply chain security. You like literally cannot walk 3 feet without hearing supply chain security at KubeCon. I think that, you know, is thanks to a couple of the, you know, open source projects and some of the new companies that are launching. They're really shining a light on that. So talk about those in the next segment. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was really good. You know, there was a Day Zero event on cloud native security where this was brought up a lot. I think there are actually a couple of Day Zero events around supply chain security. And it's good that the whole industry is talking about it. There's been security companies out there for a long time, and they kind of define security according to what their tools do, but looking at it in a holistic fashion, I think is really important. And I think we have a certain perspective on supply chain security at Slim, which we'll talk about more. We're going to do a blog post on that. But it's open source has kind of won the game. So okay, cool, great, that's awesome. Now what does that mean for how we're building software? What's in that software? Where do we get those pieces from? Are they secure? Do we know what they are? Are they secure? How do we rectify problems when we have them? And so I just thought that was it's good to see that out there. The Linux Foundation launched the OpenSSF project, which is going to be really looking at supply chain security stuff, and it'll just be a good topic going forward. I think it's going to kind of rule the day in cloud native development for some time now. So
yeah. So Yannick was asking, this is a noob question, but what is supply chain security about? And Esme and Gitpod are sort of trying to answer that question. So for the benefit of our audience that are thinking the same thing, supply chain security is this concept where if you take a language like Ruby or Node, there's lots of little micro packages and micro modules that fill these niches. So instead of having to write a bunch of code, you can just pull in these modules and packages into your application in order to add functionality. But now you are sourcing hundreds if not thousands, because you don't necessarily know what the knock-on package dependencies for a thing that you've pulled in, and you don't necessarily know who's publishing them or where they're coming from or what security exposure those dependencies or the thing that you've chosen has. So supply chain security is about understanding what that software bill of materials is that composes your application, and knowing precisely which versions of the software you have in your application that you're deploying into production. And I think probably the most famous example of a supply chain security attack was the LeftPad package from Node, when I think they actually removed it from the repository because they were disgruntled about something, and it turned out millions of projects were consuming this and they all just broke and stopped working. So that's one example, but then there's been other examples where existing well-used projects have been out there, the maintainer has announced they want to step down, and somebody else who's looks like a reputable member of the community steps in to continue, and then they sell on their responsibility to a bad actor who then embeds malicious code or crypto miners or something in these packages, and then they get deployed at scale. So it's trying to mitigate all of that, well, not just that, but a whole bunch of things around. Where is your software coming from? How's it being used? Is it trustworthy?
Yeah, when you're just sort of installing and building things you don't necessarily know. And then, I think there's a lot of good XKCD comics and different memes about this stuff. NPM install is sort of like this giant magnet that just sucks every package that's ever been created into it in a way. And, as a security person, you should be a little worried about that. And then sometimes things change underneath the container that you don't necessarily know about. And that opens the door to crypto mining attacks, or people using your cloud resources in a way that you don't know or don't want to. And so, I think it's definitely something that's the hot topic of the day, and a lot of space to try to figure it out and improve it, so.
Yeah. So what was your best open source project of the KubeCon event, Pieter?
Yeah, so I had a couple, and one I'll talk about in my top container trend, because I kind of realized that it's not actually an open source project. I don't know. I'd have to, maybe the community here can give me a little guidance on whether this is an open source project. But so I'll talk about sort of related to what I just talked about is SigStore. So Project SigStore, it's a project that came out of Google in 2021. It has to do with signing your containers or your packages, the software that is in your application and you cryptographically sign them, and then you have a record. You're sort of freezing that supply chain, call it, in place. And then you can do a lot of things around verification and knowing that, something's not changing out from underneath your package. And so, this project had a lot of visibility during KubeCon, and I think it's gotten a lot, in the run up to it, because the sort of leaders of some of the leaders of the project are Dan Lawrence and Kim Lewandowski and Matt Moore, and they're coming out of Google and forming a company called ChainGuard.dev, and they were very classic startup style. They didn't have a booth. They were there handing out t-shirts out of backpacks and doing all that kind of fun stuff. But certainly SigStore looks like it's gaining a lot of steam, and it kind of solves this, okay, can I trust what's in my containers or in my application? And the answer is no, you can't. So verify, and so, but they had a booth themselves, and it was good. There was a lot of activity around it. And, it seems like, it's kind of a hot topic of an open source project. So good to see that one out there. What about on your side, Martin? What was the open source project that caught your eye?
Well, one that so our friends at Gitpod, I think. I've been learning a little bit about Gitpod, and I really am embracing it as a good developer experience. Being able to create development workspaces in the cloud that are pre-configured and ready to go. It's a very powerful tool and easy to use, and I know Bigpod, who is in our chat here today, has been a long time user of that, and where I first heard about it. And I suppose there's a nice segue there in that Bigpod and I did a live stream here, I think 2 weeks ago, something like that, where we actually packaged up one of the components, the Gitpod Open VS Code server, so that it can be deployed on different Linux environments and Ubuntu and Debian and what have you. So we did a live stream where we got that packaged up and we got it working. And then Bigpod, who's in our community, has then been working with Jeff at Gitpod to get that delivered. And I saw just earlier today that Jeff was saying, thanks very much to Bigpod for all the hard work. It looks like they're up and running. So it's there's a nice little sort of relationship developing there, and it's a great project. And if you're looking for if you've got different projects that you work on and you need different development environments, it's a great way to create that isolation between projects.
Yeah, well, big kudos to Bigpod. I did
Indeed.
Catch that live stream, and that was awesome. It was cool to see that. I've been playing around with the OpenVS server. That's a really cool project. And it made me feel a little better with all the sort of hoopla around the new Mac M1s. I have Mac M1 that I got the previous version, and then it felt good because a lot of the people who really like OpenVS server were coming out saying, it doesn't really matter what hardware you have on your computer, because you're going to run your development environment in containers or, in these servers anyway. So I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm just going to develop in the cloud as it is. So not going to stop me from buying new gadgets and stuff, but it was cool to see that, and I'm definitely going to grab that project down on the Linux side of my desktop box here once I get a chance. So that was super cool. So
and Danny in our chat says Gitpod is eminently more usable than trying to coerce Eclipse, and I have used Eclipse in the past, but and in fact, I worked on packaging up Eclipse for the Eclipse Foundation in a similar way that we did for the OpenVS Code server. And I can tell you, we did that OpenVS Code server in about an hour on a live stream. And I think I spent nearly 2 weeks working on Eclipse and only partly had it working. So I appreciated the ease of actually working with the technology as well. Another good developer experience story in the way that they publish their artifacts. Very easy to work with.
Yeah, super cool. So I haven't had to use Eclipse in a while. I do use JetBrains every once in a while. So I know there's IDE wars out there. I think maybe Yannick's trying to start another one in chat with the what about star star star? If that stands for VIM, I don't know if we're going to go there.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I've put that in the block list.
It would be pretty good. Here's another idea for Bigpod. Like, what if we do a version of OpenVS Server that looks like Vim, but is in a cloud hosted environment, right? So you're doing it, hosted through your browser, and it's impossible to quit. You just can never leave. So
wonderful, very good. I know what Yannick's going to say. I can send my spider sense is going off. We'll wait for his comments. I'm sure it's incoming any moment.
Yeah. All right. So Martin, what was your top container trend from KubeCon? We're Slim.AI, we're working Docker containers, and what did you hear during the show or see during the show that you thought like, okay, this is related to containers and this is where the container world is going?
So lots of people asking, does your product require Docker, or can I use insert name of other container runtime? So lots of people kind of responding to the recent announcements about Docker Desktop, who are actively seeking to find alternative runtime solutions.
Yeah, heard this a lot at the booth too, in person, Builda, Podman, Creo, Containerd, like all kinds of people kind of, well, does it do this? Because, we're thinking about this. And, obviously Docker Slim, our open source project, uses the Docker daemon. It works on any OCI compliant container, but it was definitely an interesting topic. I think, kind of a confluence of, OCI taking over as a standard, Docker, making that decision about Docker Desktop that they had to make. And a lot of people just saying, so sort of, okay, well, like if I can build my images however I want, do I need to use the Docker daemon? Can I use other things? What are the advantages of those? Yeah, I think mine, and I'm kind of curious your take on this. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but the thing that I really wanted to talk about, and if people in the chat know about it, I would love to hear more, because I got pretty friendly at Cloud Native Rejects with a couple people in the WASM community, that is the WebAssembly community. And WebAssembly, so a WC3 project that's come out. It's now supported by all browser types, which is a pretty big coup for them. Has really, really great, it's not exactly a container technology, so it's not a replacement for Docker per se, but they do have sort of concepts around containers, which are incredibly small and incredibly fast. It's still a very emergent technology in that it doesn't have great support for Python. There are other languages that it can kind of struggle with. It's really good for people who use Rust, and that's kind of the community that's really embracing WASM. But it seemed like there was a lot of just people around talking about WebAssembly. There was a day zero event around WebAssembly. And then right afterwards, a person who I met at Cloud Native Rejects came out with a new Stack article about how WASM is likely to replace Docker or replace containers as a technology, which I think was, it's meant to be a little controversial forward thinking statement. I don't know that the tech is there yet. But it's interesting to see, could that be the next big thing? So
yeah, well, we'll see here. So Danny says the great thing with WebAssembly is the sandbox that it runs inside. Yeah, so I have a little bit of experience with WebAssembly. A few months ago, I entered a game jam, wrote my first computer game for like 30 years. And I used the Godot or Godot engine, depending on where in the world you are as to how it's pronounced. And that has its own language, and it also supports, other contemporary languages as well. But it has its own language called GDScript. But it can build the game for multiple platforms, and one of the platforms is web. And the way it targets the web is by building a WebAssembly version of your game. Okay. And I was just it was just remarkable, because the the integration is very clever. Like if you're running this web game on a tablet, for example, it knows it's a touch device and it enables all of the touch gestures and feels. But it was very small, and as Danny points out, you get like a single file, which is everything. So you can see why they're making the claim that you don't require a container, because it is contained in its own right. And I read a very interesting article, because you can create full like desktop style graphical environments. And so there was one guy who works in the oil and gas industry, creating complex sort of geographical analysis tools and for what have you. And they are traditionally desktop applications, and they're bespoke for the industry or the field that they're working in, and they're complex. And he was saying that this was the only, using Godot to create these graphical tools and deploying them to the web was the only way he could write sophisticated UIs and deploy over the web. So he was actually talking about, it's not just games. You can write like full desktop applications that are in a browser. So yeah, I think it's an interesting space for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I've heard the performance is quite good. So one person that I met who is a speaker at Cloud Native Rejects, and she spoke at WASM Day, her name's Bailey Hayes, and she's a principal engineer at Single Store, which is a database company. They came out of, the founder was the inventor of SAS, the analytic programming language that basically every grad student on the planet learned up until Python and R came around. And so it's funny, they call their database sort of a database of last resort. It's that, not that people wouldn't like it at small scale, but it's really built for really high performance read writes. And it's all about performance. And her kind of Bailey's take on it was, okay, well, we needed to go to WASM so that we would have the performance to, that they're handling people from a lot of really, really big companies that you've heard of, technology that we're using right now on this call and all of that kind of stuff. And, it was impressive to hear her take on it from just a pure performance standpoint, using Rust put into WASM and using that to actually like drive the database performance. So pretty interesting stuff. I mean, I definitely am curious about it. I want to hear more about it. I think, we'll see if, they can get the Python support for that, and then I can actually use it, because I don't know that I'm going to learn Rust tomorrow, but maybe I can do my own live stream learning Rust, or Gitpod can teach me. But,
and Mscripton is how Godot actually does that translation, and Gitpod points out that Autodesk have moved one of their big applications. You can't remember if it's AutoCAD or Maya, but to run in the browser, and it's using WebAssembly in order to do it. So impressive stuff.
Yeah, very cool.
So, what was your best attract mode at the event? Okay,
well, so obviously a lot of swag at the events, and I do have to give a shout out. So there was a lot of good swag. Like Microsoft, I believe it was, had like the little stuffed animals, the plushies for each of the different languages. So they had these really cute little like gophers, and they had the Python ones for the snakes, so I was going to get one of those. But I think I would be very remiss, because I'm actually, if I can show this, I'm actually wearing these right now, which are the InfluxDB socks, which I just want to say I am like a super sock snob. I am like just the biggest sock snob. And so I like go get mine from this wool mill in Vermont and all this stuff. These are some of the best socks that I've ever owned, and shout out to Cat Stevens. That is the person's name, who runs the InfluxDB booth and is amazing. And so yeah, I mean, they're made at a woolen mill in North Carolina, sort of a local shop, and they are just super comfortable. I wore them basically all through my travels. And so while there were a lot of socks given away at KubeCon, there was a lot of great swag. The Plumie folks had really awesome Moscow Mule mugs and all kinds of cool stuff. But, a good pair of socks like really, really, really wins my heart. So yeah.
Yeah, so I see Aisha pointing out that sock snob is a thing now. Yeah, that's like, of all of the snobbery, I didn't realise it extended to socks. So today I learned.
It dates back to my it dates back to my sort of like outdoor gear writing days where, I figured out what antimicrobial socks were when I was like making no money whatsoever, and but was spending tons of money on really high performance socks. So yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
I can understand it. When I used to play rugby, it would be you'd be cold and wet on a Sunday morning after a match of rugby, and the feeling of putting on warm, dry, clean socks it's a marvelous moment.
Yeah, somebody who grew up skiing in New England in cotton socks, I will tell you, like, good socks make a huge difference. So, especially when you're outdoors. So
there
what about what about you, Martin? What was your like top attractor? What was the thing that you noticed from just getting mind share, getting people's attention, making it a good conference experience?
I'm a little bit biased because of how I attended these conferences. But also the feedback that I got, and that is that virtual booths matter. So there is quite a lot of setup required in order to sort of put a virtual booth together, because you're giving a number of tools in terms of creating your presence, with documents that people can download and where they can sign up for stuff, additional information, job postings, videos and stuff like that. And we did all of that good stuff. But one thing that we did at KubeCon is we made use of our live slots to present in the virtual booth to actually do a live topic. A bit like we have a topic today, we would present something for real. And a lot of the other people running the virtual booth were just playing out pre-recorded material. And I heard from a number of the virtual attendees that they felt like the cost of entry to the virtual event wasn't as valuable when so much of the content was pre-recorded and there wasn't the opportunity to speak to people in person and interact in these live moments. So a little bit of a pat on the back for us, and you in particular, for sort of organising that schedule of activities, because people actually found value in that and, came to our booth because we were doing something that they could actually participate in. So that was one of the things I took away from that.
Yeah, well, pat yourself on the back too. I mean, I think just highlighting the time zone challenges just alone, right? I mean, we were in LA, you and I were coordinating at, during the day your time, and then you're doing this at night, and I'm sure your family had things that they needed and all of that kind of stuff, and we have to do the virtual booth. And yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing that's going to be, we'll see in the future what this turns into. Sort of people do hybrid events now where it's all pre-recorded, and that can be really good because the production value is really high. But then, it's kind of like, okay, I'm trying to watch that while I'm working, and I don't really know if that's a good use of time. I can go into the virtual booth and have real interactions, but even that can be a little asynchronous. I think Yannick was mentioning the Slack channel before with 13,000 people in it. It got very busy. It was a little hard to follow. There are good things happening. There are good conversations happening, but it's like you blink and you miss it. You're scrolling way down for your stuff.
And you mentioned 13,000 virtual attendees. You need to, if you want to separate yourself from the crowd, you need to appeal to that large audience, because it's a significantly larger audience than the boots on the ground. So you do need to do something to actually distinguish yourself so that they stop by and come and see what you're up to.
Yeah, we actually streamed this show to the booth, so I don't know if people noticed that or saw in the in the Twitter photo that we posted for this one. So we were actually streaming directly to it. So I'll say that the conference Wi-Fi was pretty good, and it was good to be able to do it, but you couldn't do sound, so it gave people, it was a little out of context as Aisha was presenting the container report or we were doing the PaymentWorks case study. People could see it and follow along, but they couldn't hear it. So yeah, I think there's some more refinements. Maybe there's a good company idea out there for any aspiring entrepreneurs, like help us figure out this hybrid conference. Maybe we could do a hackathon and do an open source OBS conference takeoff or something. But yeah.
I think we've learned something from the last two, particularly Open Source Summit and KubeCon. I think we've got lots of takeaways about how we can improve our presence, not just in person, but also our virtual presence at those events or events like that in the future. I'm looking forward to having another crack at it. Actually, I think we're getting quite practiced at this now. Yannick points out he's disappointed that he couldn't shower us with confetti during this conversation. I've recently added a feature to my own channel where I can be showered in confetti and other things. So if you like that, maybe we could shower Pieter in socks, high quality socks.
I'll just order a bunch from REI right now, so we have them just in case, So that sounds good to me. A Heisen says, paid a company to write live captions and subtitles for their conference. Yeah, I have noticed that for the pre-recorded ones, that's a very nice thing when you get the subtitles, whether you are hearing impaired or not. I think it's nice to just be able to have those and read along and be able to get that transcript afterwards. I just did the Cloud Engineering Summit that Pulumi put on, which was one day pre-recorded, just kind of a quick thing, but they had a really nice platform for it, and it was a really good event. So yeah, and Big Pod points out that the next KubeCon is in Valencia, Spain, which I've already soft committed us to.
That's muy bueno.
Yes, that is in your neck of the woods, Martin. I think you'll be at that one.
Absolutely.
So, I'm not sure if the Slim.AI, will sign my expense report for that one, but that sounds like quite a fun one. So hopefully we can see some of the European folks over for that one at the end of May there. Yeah. So
well, that sort of rounds up our picks from those events, but. I can exclusively reveal, Pieter, that you had a good night moment with a Hollywood celebrity every night.
By LA, I didn't think you were going to put it quite like that, but yes, this is true. So this was the view from my hotel room bed. Just so people know, the curtains just would barely not close in my room. And outside, if anybody was at the KubeCon show, they saw this massive photo of Jason Momoa in his new Apple TV show. But when I would close the blinds to my room, this is what I went to bed to every night. So it was like, good night, Jason Momoa. Good night, Pieter. And my wife is a huge Jason Momoa fan, so she got a big kick out of this. And she was like, can you just stay a little while longer? Maybe just turn the FaceTime around so I can see Jason Momoa, if you don't mind. So, yes, it was a little unsettling, but also very comforting to go to bed to Jason Momoa every night. Transcendental.
It's a beautiful moment. Beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing.
So good night, Jason Momoa. Good night, Twitch stream. Thank you, community, for coming.
Yes. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed that little chat. You can join us in our Discord. You'll find the links on the website. In fact, the website has had a bit of a coat of paint, hasn't it? So the new website is up and running.
Yeah. We worked with a company called Narwhal Digital. We released this just during KubeCon, and we're trying to tell our product story a little bit more. So as we've been showing everybody, we're excited to get into sort of showing. We've been talking a lot about understanding what's in your containers and how to reduce their size. Now we're going to start talking a little bit more about automating that in your CI/CD pipelines, rethinking your DevOps workflows, and a lot of interesting stuff coming up in the platform. So stay tuned and check out the website. If you have feedback, please let us know. So it's very fancy. It also looks really great on mobile. So I think that was a good improvement. And then we of course highlight our case study with our friends at PaymentWorks there as well. So
that's an excellent read, that as well. They were great. I really enjoyed talking to them at the event last week. It was good fun. Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming, everyone. We'll be back the same time next week. I may do an ad hoc stream on maybe Wednesday next week, if Bigpod is available, but I know he's got some other commitments, so we'll see how we get on with that. But we'll be back next week with probably a technical piece next week. Are we going to trail what that might be, or are we going to keep our powder dry?
I think it depends a little bit on how successful I am with my view coding skills. As you remember from Containers 101, we wanted to split up our now volumized photo app,
Right.
which crashed my browser last time. So I'm going to work on that. If we don't get to that, then we have a great follow-up, a great plan B, which is about debugging containers, which I think we'll go into. So 5 kind of common ways to debug a container when they go wrong. And maybe that's linked to the struggles I'm having with the Vue.js app, because maybe I'll need that to actually debug those containers. But I think we'll do one of those too. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Eric says he's all about debugging. Yes, Eric, I am absolutely with you on that. There are some great tips and tricks in this one. We have a blog post coming out on it. So
yeah, I was only allowed one thing in each of the categories, but container debugging was something that came up a few times in conversations last week as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So we can definitely do that. And yeah, volumized, Yannick, I don't know if I used that correctly, but it's like a hair commercial kind of, I guess. I don't know. But
right.
Volume out of your apps.
Okay. If you've got any questions or follow on for us, join our Discord and we'll be happy to have a chat with you. And we look forward to speaking to you all again soon. So thanks very much for joining us, Pieter. And that's all for now, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And thanks everybody in chat. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.